And good evening. Welcome to the Jobseeker Chat series with myself, Louise Clients, running these events with s1jobs.com. They're Scotland's #1 job site. We're delighted to be working with S1 Jobs to provide their 1 million Scottish job seekers a new interactive way to access advice and guidance to help them succeed in their career. And today we are joined by two fabulous co-hosts. I'm joined by two, Danielle and Amy, and we're going to talk about interview tips and tactics. And I think that this is an enormous subject, so we're going to try to move through it quite swiftly. We've got about 45 minutes. If you're watching this live on Facebook, then you're welcome to comment, but we're actually following the stream of conversation on the Crowdcast link. And if you're watching on Crowdcast, you'll see us, and there's a chat box down the right hand side where you can ask questions, and please do, and we will answer them during the show. If you're watching this after the fact, then do please get in touch with any of us. We're all happy to make that connection. I'm going to briefly let my two hosts introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to the first part of this topic. So Danielle, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I'm Danielle. My business is called Hot Seat Recruitment, and I've been working with people for the last 17 years to coach them through their interviews and getting a job. So hopefully I'll be able to help with interviews and getting a job.
Oh, sorry, I slightly lost my sound there. Okay, and Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi guys, my name's Amy Bateman. I'm the founder of careercake.com. So ex-recruiter in the recruitment game for about 12 years, and then decided that I was going to make YouTube videos back in 2010 when nobody was really doing much on YouTube, trying to help people get jobs. So I started off with a £10 camera from eBay, just giving people interview and CV advice. Careercake.com now operates in 42 countries, and we give advice to job seekers as well as employers on how to gain the best talent and sell themselves.
Okay, great. So on the basis of that, I will be saying very little because I'm not the expert here. But collectively between us, I reckon we've got a good, well, I reckon 50 years plus recruitment experience. So I think we should be able to hopefully help a few people.
Yeah, of course we will.
So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about what the objective of the interview is, because I think that for some job seekers, for some of us, when we go to an interview, we feel a bit like perhaps we're trying to be caught out by the hiring manager or by the HR person. And we're talking about interviews here with the end client, not the interview through the agency. And sometimes when we get to that stage, we feel quite a lot of pressure that they're just trying to find ways in which we're not right. And that can be a really negative stance to take coming into an interview. Whereas obviously what a positive attitude, as we've talked about in lots of previous shows, is the key. So going to you first, Amy, what is the hiring manager looking for? What's the objective of the interview in your experience?
Ultimately, it comes down to two things. One, are you going to make my business more profitable? And that's indirectly or directly. And two, am I going to want to see your face for 8 hours every day? i.e., do you believe what I believe? So interviews are not there to get people to understand your life story. They are there for those two objectives. Will you make my business more profitable? Am I going to want to hang with you for 8 hours every day? i.e., do you believe what I believe? If you have a bad day on Monday, are you going to rock up on Tuesday? Are you going to call in sick? If I ask you to work overtime, are you going to do it? Or are you going to storm off and, have a stop? Are you going to go into battle with me 8 hours a day? So it always comes down to showcasing your commercial value, but also your personal, individual motivators and values too. And you've got to remember that they're nervous. Oh my goodness, I do so much coaching with employers before they do interviews. I actually had one person pay me just to do the interview while he sat there to take notes, which I thought was a bit weird, because he was so nervous about saying something that would put somebody off wanting to work with him. So, yep.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that that's the thing to remember, is that you're matching, it's two people in this process, and feeling that you are the underdog in this process is a really win. Any other thoughts around this sort of objective, Danielle?
Well, yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. I think sometimes if you go into the interview feeling like you're just being assessed and, am I going to be good enough? I'm being tested. Then you're going in. and you're automatically putting yourself on the back foot. So it's just a bad start. You're going to be thinking of ways to impress rather than reassure, really, which is what I believe the interview process is all about from both sides, more of a reassurance thing.
Okay. So what we're trying to do here is to understand what the client, the hiring manager is looking for, and match ourselves up to that, but also to see whether the job's right for us. And I don't think we should forget that, what you said there, Amy, is about the person who's hiring you wanting to see you day in, day out. But as the job seeker, we need to feel that this is a good match for us. So this is somewhere we want to go every single day. And I think that's something we should always try to pull out of the interview. It's not about just trying to impress them. It's about getting that match right. So we'll talk about some of the ways you can do that. Right. Pre-interview preparation. Now there's two parts to the interview. There's the stuff you do beforehand and there's the stuff you do in it, and we'll come to quite a bit of detail about the bits you can do during the interview. But in terms of this pre-interview preparation, if you work with a recruitment consultancy like you are, Danielle, would you help that job seeker with the interview preparation? What would you expect to do in that process?
I would always help someone that was preparing for an interview, but I think the main thing that I always try and tell the people that I do work with is really not to don't over prepare or don't over rehearse, should I say, because quite often people will, put aside a day or, a large amount of time to crack on with their interview preparation, and they'll completely hammer their computer and be looking into how long the company's been going, just absolutely everything about the company history, which is great. But quite often the interview preparation, I believe, should be more about what the job is all about and what, where you fit in. And so you can sometimes almost waste quite a bit of time by looking at the wrong thing. You might be rocking up to that interview completely confident that you know absolutely everything about the business and the MD and everything like that. But I mean, really, you need to be rocking up knowing where you can help them out. As Amy says, they're looking to you as the solution to their problem, what you can bring. And so you really be thinking, it's more about you need to research yourself and prepare about yourself, go back over your own history and get really kind of remind yourself of why you went for the job in the first place. So I think sometimes a lot of interviews fall short because the preparation has been done, but maybe it's not being focused on the right thing.
Okay, and would you agree with that, Amy?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that the first thing you need to do before you go out to market a product, selling a product, the psychology of somebody buying into a product is the same whether you're buying anything, and you're ultimately selling something to a person. You're selling yourself, but you're still selling something. Before you go to market to sell anything, you've got to understand what your product does. And too many people go out there to sell themselves and have no idea who they are. And I'm not saying this thinking that, just 21-year-olds haven't got levels of self-awareness. I'm talking about all of us. Our level of self-awareness is our absolute greatest tool. If we know where we thrive, where we die a death, where we add value, that's great. But also, if we understand how we react in certain situations, that will help too. So self-analysis, our strengths and our weaknesses are so important because their BS radar is through the roof. The world is full of people telling other people how fabulous they are. We get it all day long on our emails, on every piece of documentation, and they're going to go into that room expecting you to say great things about yourself. But if you really understand who you are, when you look them in the eye and you say, yes, I can do this. Yes, I know that person out there has got 10 years more experience than me, but I can do this because of A, B, C. And you have that level of confidence, they'll believe you. So I think it does start with preparing your own product research on who you are.
And we talked in one of the earlier shows about having a buddy or a mentor or somebody who you just work through this process with. And I guess that would be where it'd be useful to spend some time with them in preparation for the interview, and to try to bounce stuff off them around this. What value can I add?
Yeah, my biggest concern about job seekers when they're preparing for interviews is isolation. So people just go, right, I'm going to book the day off work. I'm going to focus exactly what you said earlier about I'm going to go on the website. I'm going to research the MD. What university did she go to? All of this stuff. But what happens when you don't speak all day and you no matter how confident you are, we can go into ourselves a little bit and become a product for our environment. So I always say schedule a call with a lighter. And a lighter is somebody that makes you feel fabulous. It could be anybody, but somebody that makes you feel like you can take over the world. Schedule a call with a lighter and get them to talk about a topic that you are specifically hot on, somewhere where you are epic on and you're really knowledgeable and makes you feel good. And talk about that for a good 30 minutes, even if it's the last thing you do. That's more important than checking the website one more time and rehearsing your answers. Getting yourself in that right headspace is really, really important.
I love that. I love that. So knowing that you rock on this in this area.
There's no point just talking to somebody that loves you. That's great. No. But you have to get yourself in a headspace. So when I'm about to go on stage and I'm really nervous to talk, I have somebody will say, talk to me about A, B, and C, like something I don't know a lot about but I know a lot about a little bit. So I get them to talk about my little bit. And then I feel epic. And then I walk on that stage and I feel powerful. And that's what we want to do. You get somebody that's a lighter to get you to talk about something you're knowledgeable on, and then you'll feel powerful.
That's a fabulous tip. I love that. So Danielle, you said, obviously we all know how we can research a company. We would look on LinkedIn, we look on their website, stuff like that. But you say research the role and how you fit with that role. What happens if all you've seen is the advert on the job board and it's 7 lines long? How do you manage to work out where you might fit with that?
Well, I think if it was me personally and I'd got to interview stage on, something with very little information, yeah, I would be feeling, I'd be feeling a bit worried. I think you kind of need to go back a couple of stages and, make sure that you do get enough information. And even if it is the case, if the information is quite sparse, as you said, then maybe you need to research similar jobs and think, okay, well, I'm not getting loads of information here for this particular one, but let me look at something similar. And maybe you just have to be a bit creative. It's there's only so much you can do with short job spec, but there are a few things you can do to maybe look at other roles that could be similar, and then look back and see what they would want and build your prep around that, really.
Or you need to phone up, speak to the receptionist, storytell, influence. I'm really excited about this interview tomorrow. Build a relationship with whoever is on reception and say, have you got anything else? Is there anything else you can give me? Build a relationship. Before you walk in that room, that should not be the first time you've had contact with that person. You should have already connected with them on LinkedIn if you can, follow them on Twitter. You should have a hot list. You should have built that relationship. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Thursday. If the first time you're seeing them is when you walk in that room, potentially you might have already, in my opinion, bold statement, already lost, because somebody out there will be using social to have already had that connection.
And I think that's a concern for some of us, is where that line is. Are we crossing that line? Are we stalking them? So I've got a friend who works for the National Trust, and she said to me they are really, really happy for any job seeker who is coming for an interview to do a walk around before the interview. And that's just great. Now, it doesn't surprise me, actually, because that's the sort of, I don't know, the cultural fit you might imagine of the National Trust. But as a job seeker, would I feel comfortable in phoning up the factory down the road that I want to be a marketing person for and asking for a look around? I'm not sure I would. So maybe that sort of softer introduction via connecting with someone on LinkedIn appropriately. Don't stand outside the office saying hello to everyone as they leave. Step too far. No, but I think that's all great suggestions. I've got a suggestion from Claire in the side column, which is this is in the pre-prep stages. I write 4 lists in this stage: what I love about the job, what I really don't like doing in the job, what I respond well to, what I aspire to. These are just 1 2-word answers, keywords gathered over a few days before the interview, providing the keywords for answering the questions. And I guess that's around thinking what questions are going to be asked. And I think that's great. You have to, we don't want to have these really well rehearsed answers to what's your greatest weakness, as nobody likes that. That's a horrible question with a terrible answer. But I guess so where do we stand? So Amy, where do we stand on this practicing interview questions beforehand? So
you probably won't agree with this, but I'm rehearse. So every interview question is going to be along one of certain themes. They're either going to be to self-motivation, teamwork, time management, problem solving, and motivation, so that you roughly know where they're going to be. There's those problems within those areas. I don't know what I just said actually, so I might have got them wrong, but those 5 themes. And for you to think about examples of how you add value within those 5 areas is really, really important. And I always say practice them out loud, practice them when you're hoovering, practice them instead of listening to songs on the radio, say them out loud. When you're in the room, if you suffer from nerves, the more rehearsed and the more conscious you are of saying these words, the more they're just going to roll off the tongue. I know there are some people that say that you shouldn't say them too. I'm not saying you want to be robotic, but you have to be fully conscious of the words that you're saying and be almost, so that if you are nervous, then they're just going to roll off the tongue. What I would say is a lot of people go into these interviews with one example for each of those things. And I know lots of people that go, that's really interesting. Have you got another example? And they haven't, and then they're stumped, and that's really difficult. And also on the weakness thing, I hate that question. I think it should be banned. I have 4 million hits on my YouTube video about this, and that just goes to show how much people hate this question. I'll talk about that separately. You might want to talk about that later, but that's my thoughts. And I know that I'm not God, and what I say is not true, but I personally think rehearsing is the best way. Danielle might disagree, which is cool.
Well, what do you think, Danielle?
No, I think rehearsing and getting clear on what you feel and what you believe and what you want, the points you want to get across, I think that's great. What I meant when I said don't over rehearse is kind of going back to don't research or don't spend too long on the wrong thing. So I'm all for doing a bit of rehearsals. I think that's definitely good. But what I mean is there'll be so many people that will be preparing for an interview and and then they do get asked for strengths and weaknesses or whatever, and they just go into the pressure's on and they're like, oh, what did I say when I was hoovering, or oh my god, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and then it does kind of, and so like you say, just make it as natural. I know I totally agree with what you're saying, because the more you say the words out loud, the more they are just going to come, and the more you're going to believe them, the more you hear yourself saying them, the more they're going to ring true and you are going to feel them. So I do get that, definitely.
It's like that whole what's your weakness, and somebody then gives you a strength that's also a weakness.
Perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah, I work too hard. It's like nobody is that awesome that their weakness makes them more awesome.
Well, I wouldn't get a job is I'd actually say what my weakness really was. So I think that what we're saying here is to consider the questions you're likely to be asked and think about a genuine answer for those questions and feel comfortable with the terminology you would use to describe who you are and why you can give a positive answer to these questions.
Can I just say, I think when you're going and looking at the questions, rather than just think, what are they asking me? That's listening, but that's not really conscious listening, really understanding, why are they asking me this question? That's how you get your killer answer. So when they say, what's your biggest weakness? They're not asking you what's your biggest weakness. They're saying, are you going to look me in the eye and lie to me? Or are you going to be real to me? That's what they're really asking. I mean, they might be asking the other thing too, but there's an element of, are you going to give me a textbook answer that you read on Google last night? Or are you going to look me in the eye and say, actually, I struggle with this? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be real with me? Because that's a lot of the reason why they're asking this question. So if you think, why, if I was the employer and I asked this question, why would I forge a beautiful answer? Mm-hmm.
And that leads to what I was about to move on to, which is trying to link the answers you give to some of the things they're looking for. So if you have had oversight of a decent job description or a very comprehensive advert, and that they're looking for somebody who is more than up for international travel, and then they're saying, what's your strength? And you don't, for God's sake, don't say I love international travel, but you're tying in what they're looking for to the genuine answer to what they can also see in your CV. And God, that's a lot of things to do in one go. But I think that's, I guess, why you should be saying it while you're vacuuming, is exactly as you've just said, Amy, to pull it all together, isn't it?
Always bring it home. So everything that you give them, they're not there to be best friends with you. They'll be best friends with you when you got the job and you're going for drinks every Friday. Right now, they don't care about your life story or what you love. They only care about what is relevant to them. So if you say that my biggest achievement is running marathons, then bring it home to them. So you might say, well, that's my biggest achievement. I'm like, oh, that's great. But ultimately, it's because everything I put my mind to, I achieve. When I push through those pain barriers, I hit what I say I'm going to hit, and I push myself, and I bring that to your job as a whatever it is, always bring it home to the commercial value of that job.
Yeah, no, love that. And I know that on the S1 site, there's actually some more interview tips and tricks on there. And I think that one of the things which is on there is a list of some suggested questions you might get asked. And I can make those available to people as well. So the pre-interview prep, a couple more bits are presenting yourself appropriately. And I feel for anyone going for a job, knowing what is appropriate to wear for interview. Now, unless you're going to do my top tip of standing outside watching everyone who leaves, Danielle, how would you know how to dress for an interview?
Well, it's going to come down to a few things, isn't it? I mean, it depends what kind of job it's going to be, what kind of company it's going to be. I think, you can, when you're doing your research, most of the time these days, you can get a feel for a company's personality with social media. It doesn't take too much to do a little bit. It's not stalking, it's research. You do a little bit of looking and seeing, what you can get quite a good idea of what the company vibe is, what the people are like. Quite often you can see photos of the team and stuff like that. But what I would say is, even if you do get a feel for the company vibe, personality, style, or whatever, and you see that it might be quite informal, I wouldn't kind of think, oh, okay, I'll rock up in my jeans. I would kind of be aware of it, but I wouldn't be led by it. So, I think the standard rules apply, don't they? I don't know if it is a case of being completely suited and booted these days, but, it's what you're comfortable with. There's no point, if you're not a suited and booted kind of person, then you won't be yourself. If you kind of try and force that, the same stretch. Don't, like, if you do see they're quite an informal company, don't like rock up in your summer gear. But just kind of it's as long as you kind of make sure the standard rules of presentation are kept to, and brush your hair, shine your shoes, stuff like that. I think you can, like, going back to my original point, you can get a good idea of what the company's look and personality is. So be led by it, but don't be fooled by it.
I love that. I couldn't agree more.
And in this sort of pre-interview piece, obviously we've talked about our mindset, and those tips were great from you, Amy. But is there anything else pre-interview that we ought to be working on, Amy?
I'm going to throw this out there. Music. We're talking about mindset. So I do a lot of psychology, and I'm obsessed with mindset massively. Apart from speech and lighter, we use music. I don't think we use music enough to deal with our mood. So I coach a lot of sports people, and they always have game songs and playlists. It makes us spend money when we're out shopping at Christmas. People put them on the MasterCard advert to make us cry. We know that it makes us feel things, but we don't use it enough day to day. So if you've got that track that makes you feel invincible, so I always listen to Sympathy for a Devil by the Rolling Stones, because sometimes I need a bit of Mick Jagger's arrogance. But if you can get a playlist and make that helps you with your mindset, then that's really important, as well as speaking to your lighters. But I think getting your examples down, understanding that you have to walk in that room and have some very intelligent questions to ask them too. So this is not an interview. This is a commercial business conversation. And I want to know if I want to work here. So you've got your questions prepared. And you understand why you're asking them too. Okay, and we'll come to those questions when we go through the actual flow of the interview. It is one of the last things we'll cover in this show, but I think those questions are really, really crucial. Yeah. And maybe even go there, as well, like go to the place of work. So before your interview, so actually drive there or get the train there. And if you can, at the time that your interview is, just so that little bit of familiarity is really, really helpful, I think, so that you're not going there and you're not going and being intimidated by this new stuff, this new place for the first time. Yeah.
And well, you don't want to turn up late. I mean, that is just such a terrible, but for so many reasons, a terrible thing. I mean, people are forgiving of travel issues, but the stress it puts on yourself, arriving late for an interview, the pressure you feel, you're already massively back-footed. You want to arrive there on time, be in control with that eye the tiger on your headphones, going in there totally prepped.
I knew that was going to get mentioned.
Now we're going to move on to during the interview, but there's two questions that we've been asked in the sidebar. There's a few I haven't managed to get to, but these are a couple I think we'll answer here because they sort of fit in this stage. So this is a message from Pamela. I'm getting disheartened at the moment, applying for jobs but getting nowhere. I'm either well overqualified or they require a degree. And she has experience, not qualifications. Now this isn't interview specific, but because it's on this show, I wonder whether, what sort of advice would you give, we'll start with you, Amy, for somebody who is finding that they're just not getting the interviews and they think it's down to the requirements, but they could still do the job?
So I would say that, so in my 12 years of recruitment as a commercial recruiter, when somebody says that you're not qualified or you're overqualified, it's not true. That's not the reason you're not getting the job. The reason you're not getting the job is because they wanted to work with somebody else in the mix. So I would say, and I'm sorry, that's harsh, and I know that, but I'm quite a harsh, direct, straight talking person. Yeah. The reason that they're not picking you is because that you're not convincing them that they want you on their team. So I would go straight back to why you get out of bed in the morning, what your motivations are, what your why is, because people won't buy what you do, they will buy why you do what you do. So I don't know what industry you're working in, but you're going to have to really understand, why are you an accountant and not a marketing manager? Why do you want to be a teacher and not a, recruitment consultant? It's convincing that person that you believe and you have something that they feel. You need to make them feel something. So I would definitely go back to that. I would also say start subscribing to like industry specific. It's very difficult to answer this question because I don't know what industry you're in, but start subscribing to industry specific blogs, educate yourself, some thought leaders, motivational stuff, anything that makes you feel good. Start doing things of value. If you're starting to question your value, the best way to feel valued is to give value to somebody else. Start mentoring someone. Start working in a charity. Start helping somebody else. Like I said, the best way to feel value is to give value. So there's a few things that you could do motivation wise. Make sure that you're face to facing with some lighters at least 3-4 times a week. Asking for feedback. Again, I don't know, have you been asking these people for feedback? Why didn't I get it? It's cool, I didn't get it, but why didn't I get it?
I think the other thing around this is that, and that's all absolutely great advice. And it's actually a few things we've covered in the previous show, which shows that we're on track, Amy, if you're saying it as well, is to find a friendly recruitment consultant in your space. Now, not everyone is as lovely as Danielle, and I know the recruitment industry does have a maybe a negative reputation in some areas, but if you can find a recruiter who specialises in your field and start to build a relationship with them, then maybe they can give you some tips about why your CV is not being viewed in the right way, and some of the sort of the messaging you need to get across so that you are considered. And I think it's great that you've been honest about why those interviews aren't happening, because I think that it's very easy to say keep trying and there's blah blah. I
used to give that feedback to people all the time and I knew it wasn't the reason.
No.
And I hated it.
Yeah.
And I knew that they just didn't have the balls to tell me the real reason, because nobody likes breaking people. Normal human beings don't like going around hurting other human beings. So they would just say that, and it's not true. If I was job hunting, Danielle is the person I'd want. I'd want somebody like you helping me. So yeah, there's a lot of friendly recruiters out there.
Yeah, just need to find them. If you look for example, if you look on a job search engine like S1 Jobs, and you look at jobs in your field, even if they're not jobs you're going to apply for, that will give you an indication of some of the recruiters who recruit in your space. So that's a tip for finding them. So Danielle, the second question I wanted to answer in this slot is, and it's actually quite similar, even though the question's different. I had a number of interviews, and this is from Benson. I had a number of interviews in the past few months. Every time I came to be their second choice. Most time I got positive feedback, and apart from less work experience in the chosen person, they were fine. Any suggestions on how I can get hired? Now, is that more or less the same response, do you think, Danielle?
I don't know. I mean, it's such a hard thing. I speak to a lot of people that seem to go through a run of this. And I had someone in just yesterday, actually, absolutely fantastic candidate, so brilliant, so experienced, the loveliest person. And she said, you know, I'm just, what is it? Who is this other person that keeps beating me? And I keep getting this feedback. I picked to the post. She said, if I hear that again, it just seems to be the case that people just keep missing out. And I don't know, maybe it is a similar thing to the whole overqualified thing. I don't know. You know, you were just picked to the post. Like Amy says, is it something where you're not getting the full story? You know, could there be something specific if you kind of go back over the last few interviews and try and really, you know, this is one piece of advice that I give to the candidates that I work with after you've had your interview. We might be coming to this, so I don't want to skip ahead, but as important as it is to do the pre-interview research, it's a really great idea. As soon as you're out of your interview, do a debrief just for yourself, and just while it's fresh in your mind, just kind of take notes. This was asked, this is what I asked, this is what's said, this is how I felt. And if you do it in the moment, you'll be so pleased that you did when you look back on it. And you know, it sounds a bit depressing. You might need it to look back if you don't get the job, but you'll be really glad you did, because you might think, oh, actually, that probably didn't come across very well, or maybe I should have done that. So it's, you know, I don't know if that's any help. It's not kind of explaining why you didn't get the jobs, and we don't know, but it could be the case that there is just something each time that is just the whole thing. When you're in an interview, we're also eager to impress, but really it's more of a reassurance thing. It really is. So maybe they're just not feeling, like Amy said, they're not convinced. We don't know why, but yes, it probably is down to the other person, but they convinced them and they reassured them, and you know, they were the ones that ultimately got the offer. And it is harsh, and it's so hard, and I really feel for anyone that is going through that, because it is hard.
It's hard. Louise, getting qualified feedback. What was that? I can't remember him. The person that says that she keeps getting feedback about being overqualified. So if you know, so we've just done a massive campaign with a guy called Chris Humphreys. We work a lot with PhD. Now, people with PhDs get this all the time when they're taking jobs outside of academia. It's really common. So if you know that this might be an issue, when they say you're overqualified, what they're actually saying is, one, I'm worried that you're smarter than me and I'm going to have to work harder and you're going to make me look bad. Or two, they're saying, I can't keep you. I will not be able to keep you. In 12 months, you're going to leave and it's going to be expensive to replace you. And I don't have the energy or the time to do all of that. So if you know that that's a problem, go in there and address it before. So say, look, can I just say, I know that in previous experiences, I've been told this, but if you are going to leave, then don't say this, and then you can't really complain because you weren't using them as a stepping stone anyway. So, but if you aren't going to leave and you genuinely aren't going to be looking over their shoulder for that bigger paycheck, for that bigger job title, then tell them. But don't just tell them. You've got to make them feel something. Why aren't you going to leave? What is it about that business? Have you experienced life as a customer? Do you know other people that have worked there? Have they helped you out? Make them feel like when you wake up in the morning, there is nobody else right now that you want to work with, and you can't see that changing. You are not overqualified. You are exactly qualified to do this job. Yeah. And if you know it's going to be a problem, just talk about it and just get it out in the interview.
Yeah, and I think that is specific advice for someone who's being told they're overqualified, but it comes back to that advice, which is make yourself the right person. And if there's a barrier, try to address it as soon as possible. The other thing, and I will move on to the during the interview thing, the other thing I'd say is that regularly when I speak to someone who hasn't got a job, they'll come to me and they'll say, you know, someone else got it and it's so unfair and the job was perfect. And then when we do that debrief that you're talking about, Danielle, the job wasn't perfect. And they'll say, well, they asked me this question, I gave them this answer. And I'll say, well, but that doesn't tie up. This job is not right for you. And, you know, I think we can take that rejection, that isn't even a rejection, we take it so personally as a rejection that we feel, why did they not want me? Rather than, why was it not right for both of us? And I know that when you're being rejected for interviews and your CV is being rejected, that is just absolutely crap and it makes you feel terrible. But broadly speaking, it wasn't right. It wasn't right for them. and probably it wasn't right for you. And sometimes it's things beyond our control, and sometimes it wasn't. But when it gets piled on time after time after time, that's when it starts to become quite demotivational. And that's some of the things like that Amy's just touched on that we can do to address that. So let's go on to the actual interview. So the purpose of the interview, as we've talked about, is to showcase yourself, to make sure they really love you, and to make sure it's right for you. Amy, do you give a lot of advice around things like body language and eye contact and things like that?
Yeah, totally. My favorite thing to tell people to instantly make yourself at ease is that as soon as you go into that business, whoever you meet, whether it's the person on reception or the person that you walk past in the corridor on your way to the toilet, is literally the most important person that you've ever met in that moment. They are your best friend. So whenever you're nervous, again, going back to the times when I'm petrified, which is every time I'm about to go on stage, I go and talk to everybody. The person in the toilet, where did you get your handbag from? Are you having a nice day? Or do you work here? Just chat to them, because the more familiar you are, it just feels like you're with friends. And not just that, will it have a psychological impact on you? You don't know the impact of anybody else that you meet. So that receptionist or the person that you met in the corridor could have a huge influence. They might not be a decision maker, but they're an influencer. So I always think it's a really important, when you're sat in reception, to don't be on your phone checking that last email or one more last text message. Everything off. When you're in the room, be in the room, engage, chat, have a look to see what's on the wall, ask questions. And then when you're in the interview room, or Mark on reception was saying that you've just won an award recently and you're all going out on Friday. That's brilliant. What was that? And be in the room if you're going to be in the room.
Yeah, I think that is excellent advice. And I know that you've done I saw the video the other day about staying in the room right to the very end.
Oh my God, my 1 mile rule. Yeah, so there's some horror stories in that.
I'm going to quickly touch on that, and then we'll come on to Danielle, because I love that.
The interview isn't over until you are 1 mile away from anybody that works in that building that building. Too many times have I interviewed people, and it goes back to the sob story, which I won't go into, but I fell in love with this person in an interview and was like, this person is going to save my life. I want to be best friends with her. I want to go for lunch every Friday. She's amazing. And then she said something on the way back to reception that I don't think she meant to say. And I wasn't sure if she was joking or not, and I couldn't take a punt on it. My point is that don't switch it off until you are out of the office. That chit chat back to reception, when you're talking about that boring meeting you've got to go back to, or you're whinging about the kids or whatever, if you've just said that you're a positive person, do not switch it off, because you're still being interviewed. And if you are rude to somebody in the car park, or as one of my candidates did, and nearly ran over some staff, and my client called me and said, I never want to interview that person again. That's it, really. Yeah, 1 mile rule. Switch it on 1 mile before you get there, switch it off 1 mile afterwards.
Yeah. And it must get you in the right frame of mind and keep you in the right frame of mind to be able to perform at your best being like that. It's the right thing to do. It's a professional thing to do. Okay, so Danielle, we obviously, when you're in an interview, what you say is important, but how do you, and we talked about dress code, I'm giving you the difficult questions, but how do we get that appropriate language and tone right? We don't want to be talking ever so carefully and posh, but what do we do about that in the interview situation?
I keep saying the same thing. I know I do, but I think if you have done the right kind of research, I'm like a broken record, I know, but if you have done the right kind of research and the right kind of preparation, you will relax into yourself and let yourself just be, and the thing is, if you do go in there and the only prep and research you've done is about the wrong kind of stuff, or maybe about stuff that isn't going to be, I've been on so many interviews myself where I've researched, how long the company's been going, all the stuff I've just said don't do. Well, I've done it all. That's why I know not to do it, because I didn't get any of those jobs. But I've done all of that, and then I sat there, and all they've talked to me about is about the job they want to hire me for, and they've never asked me, when was this company created and what's my neighbour's name, and it's made me furious, to be honest. But it's if you have done the right kind of research, you genuinely you'll know why you want to be there. Like Amy says, you'll know why this job is important to you, and why the questions that you're going to ask, you'll ask them because you want to know about them. It's you're interested, you are genuinely interested. It's not look interested, it's be interested, or don't apply for that job, or don't be there. So I think if you are overthinking the tone and the body language and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know about you, but it would just send me into some kind of weird, crazy panic, you know.
Yeah, complete head mess. Like nothing good can come from that. Like that's
and you're like, oh my god, which eye am I looking at, and where am I supposed to be, and am I sitting in a funny way, am I being standoffish?
Yeah, but when you really want something, it's really hard not to think like that sometimes.
I appreciate that.
I'm exactly the same. I sometimes think I am that person. I think I overthink things.
But what happens if you accidentally say the wrong thing? So what happens if you're in an interview situation and you say, use an inappropriate word. So you may be saying, I used to work with this guy and he was a bit of a tosser. And then you think, oh my God, I've just said tosser in an interview. I've just said it on this show and it's inappropriate. So Amy, what happens if you do an potentially enormous cock-up? What do you do? I mean, I have had a candidate who's left the room and not come back. What should we be doing if you make that mistake?
I just address it. I would just say, I'm nervous. I wouldn't normally say something like that. I'm really sorry. I hope that did make you feel uncomfortable, and you're just going to have to power through. But if you have to leave it there, you have to leave it there. So when we're nervous, and the reason that we mess up a lot of situations is that we're not in the present. So we're thinking about what we've just said, or we're worried about what we're going to say. We're not thinking about where we're actually at in this moment. So apologize, smile, but you're going to have to, and it's really hard, but leave it there. Yeah. If you're focused enough and you have prepped enough, you'll find it easy to get back into the swing of things. It's when you haven't prepped that you'll hang on to that because you don't know where to go next. So again, it comes down to preparation. But if you do it, you just apologize. It's really not the end of the world. It's not ideal, but it's not necessarily game over.
It's unlikely that any of us would say anything in an interview situation which is so shocking that the other person is going to think, you might give an answer which is not going to put you in a good light, and that's more difficult to move on for. But that's why the preparation is key. So when they say, why are you leaving, and you say, well frankly I can't stand any of my colleagues, and then you think, well, that's the wrong answer. But that isn't an answer.
That goes down to not being prepared.
Yes, exactly.
You said that, tough. If you go into an interview and you say that, and you don't get the job, sorry, but tough, because somebody else has prepared.
Yes.
Better, and they probably deserve it. So rather than focusing on the negatives of what you're leaving, focus and communicate the positives of what you're gaining. So why are you leaving your job? Because I want to gain this. I'm excited about this, which is what your company brings, rather than the negatives of what you're escaping. Mm-hmm. So it's really easy if you know to just flip your language to the positive version rather than negative.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing through practice is if you're in a very, very small family-run business and you hate it, and then you're going for an interview, you talk about the fact that you would enjoy the opportunity to work with a larger team and the scope that could give you and the input that people could bring to your knowledge, and having that mentor or a recruiter who you can talk to would certainly help with that. And really, we don't want to be at all negative in the interview at any point, even when we're talking about our greatest weakness. Be honest where you can, but we're not going in to be negative, because like you say, Amy, this is somebody wanting you in their business life for 8 hours a day, and
we're going into battle. There's somebody out there that's got more staff, working with running a business. I've been the CEO of my own company now for 5 years. It is tough. The people I've hired are people that go into battle with me every day, but ultimately they have to believe and share the same values as I do. And that's, I think, we haven't really touched on that much, but I think that to me, communicating your why, not what you do, but why you do it is just as important as how you're going to add value and all the other stuff. And I say that quickly because there's always going to be somebody out there that has 10 years more experience, uses bigger words, dresses better, knows somebody in HR that you don't know. That gal, always going to be out there. If you can connect with a why, not a what, then you'll win. You are likely to win.
Yeah.
I've always hired people that I connect with over the people that have the most experience.
If you're being interviewed by someone who's just looking to tick the boxes, then it's unlikely to be a perfect long-term move for you anyway, unless you want to have your boxes ticked. But for most of us, we don't just want to be a tick on a page. We want to have that connection too. I was going to come to you in a minute, Danielle, but I've seen a question in the sidebar, which is slightly off topic, but I'm going to answer it because it's quite an important one. Recently, we've been contacted by Eastern offshore recruiters with the promise of a job, but actually no job is there. What are they up to? Probably don't engage with them. I think that there's a number of scams that go around where people are trying to get personal details in all walks of life, and unfortunately recruitment is no different. So unless you can actually manage to have a conversation with somebody, a proper conversation with a recruitment agency, there's no need to engage, and you shouldn't be paying any recruitment agency to find you a job. In the UK, recruiters are paid by the person who is hiring, not by the job seeker. So I wouldn't give advice to any job seeker to engage with a recruiter they can't find on Facebook, find on LinkedIn, find on the web. If you're at all suspicious, get in touch with one of the recruitment governing bodies. So we're talking about other things during the interview. I had to sing around trying to be succinct, but Danielle, how do we manage to give the right length of answer? I mean, I'm a terrible waffler. I think we've all got the hang of that now. But how do we know how long to answer a question for so that we're not, are we giving enough? How do we know?
This is something I find myself surprised sometimes by giving people advice on interviews, and to make sure you stay on topic and keep to the point, when I am dreadful for rambling on sometimes. But yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be, Amy said it herself, keep bringing it home. Just keep, you want to get rid of all the kind of unnecessary chatter in your mind, of course, but there's one thing you need to keep in your mind, and that is, where am I going with this? Where am I going with this? Have I gone off topic? Do I need to bring it back, bring it home? That's such a brilliant piece of advice. Keep thinking, right, okay, I'm actually going off on a bit of a tangent here. They probably don't want to know about this. Bring it back. So it's just something really to be conscious of. I don't think there's any, trick or anything to it, but again, it's going to come back to, what they're looking for, which areas you want to touch on yourself, and make sure that they know about you. Are you getting them across? Back to Amy's, bring it home. Is this what they want to hear? Just be conscious of it.
Yeah. So I would say star. And I know that you're like, for a lot of HR people out there and recruiters, you're probably thinking star. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. I know that people have been saying to use this constantly, but it's so true. Star, use the star technique. So you talk about the situation, talk about the task. So what was the situation? Then what was required of you? What action did you take? Not the team. I'm not hiring the team. You. What action did you take? And then what was the result? What was the happy story? The happy ending? That's what I always say to people, star. And if you follow that and you feel that you're waffling, just get back to your next. Next is my A. I got to get into action quick. What is my next result? And if they want to find out more information, they can ask you. They can just say, do you want to elaborate on this? Do you want to elaborate on this? That's fine. But if you've got a structure to all of your answers, and I mean all of your answers, even in interviews, whenever situation you're selling yourself, speaking to clients, I always run through star. I use star 10 times a day, every day. Everything you should communicate when you're influencing or selling yourself is always to follow that model. And there is so much stuff on Google about star. I think people have been using it for like 100 years or something. I'm really not saying anything new or clever. It's all over the internet.
And that's something that you can work on in your preparation time. And so that actually taking a massive step back when we are thinking about the questions we're going to be asked, is making sure that we're giving an answer which does cover those areas. And like you say, they want to hear about you. So many times that I will hear the words, well, our team did this.
We did that.
And it's so as a company, we raised our profile, but specifically what I did around that was, so you don't have to sound like you're being all me. You can talk about the success of the company, but how you were part of it. In actual fact, talking about the broader success of a business and your role in it can make you appear more warm to an interviewer, because they don't want you to be creating your own brand portfolio. They want you as part of their business, contributing to their success. So merging those two things together. But it is tricky. You know, if you think you could be asked maybe 50 different questions in an interview and you've got to prepare for that, it can feel like an awful lot of work.
I think you could be asked 50 different questions, but they always come back to 5 themes. So you don't have to worry about 50 questions. You just have to have an example for something in teamwork, leadership, problem solving, organizational, timekeeping, whatever you want to call it, and self-motivation.
Yeah.
So I promise you, whatever of the 100 questions that they could throw at you, they will have a connection into, they will fit into one of those themes. Yeah. So I just think, because you can't be expected to think how are you on earth are you going to be able to predict what questions? But you do know they're going to be one of those 5 themes.
Yeah.
So if you have 2 examples where you added value within those 5, whatever they throw you, however they word it, as long as you have the intelligence to put one of those in the 5 themes, then you should be fine.
No. A majority of interviews, we're looking at maybe 40 minutes, tops an hour, depending on the seniority level. So, as long you want to give thorough answers to those questions, talking about how succinct you should be, you want to make sure you've got enough time to give a thorough answer. So if they had thought they were going to get through 50 questions, then we're very disappointed, but they are going to, they're going to feel that you've very competently answered the questions that have been asked. And there's a question in the sidebar, which I'm just going to comment on now, which is Jack asking for advice about someone who's exited an industry they enjoyed and are looking for something else. Jack, we've got 2 more shows in this series that might come up in one of those, but connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Louise Triance, and I will try and answer that one offline, just because it doesn't particularly fit in with the topic of interviews, but I'm more than happy to see whether we can try and help you, and I'll connect you with Amy and Danielle as well. And again, for anybody else who's got any questions outside of what we're talking about now, because a lot of you watching this now, and I know that interview techniques is just part of what the concern is for you in your process, do feel free to connect. So yeah, we're saying about answering questions in a specific manner, and I think we've touched on this, but it's really key to sell yourself. Now, some of us feel really uncomfortable with that. Is there an easy way to learn? I'm going for a sales role. Well, yeah, I'm brilliant at that, but a financial accountant's job, how am I going to sell myself? Where does that come from? I'll come to both of you, but have you got a tip first, Amy?
So can I give 2?
Yes.
One is prepare some kind of brag file before you go. So that would be off. So like I said, the first time you walk in that interview, hopefully that's not the first time you've met that person, you've connected with them on LinkedIn. So they've already seen your recommendations, all that kind of stuff. So they've built that, you've built brand equity within yourself already. 2, why not print off emails from customers who you've helped solve problems for, references over time, testimonies of clients, customers, and just leave it at the end and just say, I'm not great at selling myself. God, just be real. Tell them that. Like, we're all people. Like, that just because they've got a nice job title doesn't mean they're not somebody's mum, dad, brother, sister, were in that situation before. And just say to them, so I prepared this. If you've got 5 minutes after I leave, feel free to take a look, or feel free to have a look at it through our interview. I'm happy to ask any questions, and just prepare it in a really nice file. That is going to blow their mind. And 2, we do this exercise when we're doing workshops with people. Don't sell. If I ask you to tell me how amazing you are, it's really difficult. If I say, who's your best friend? What's her name? What do you love about her? Right, go. Tell me how amazing she is. That's really easy. So sometimes I get people to talk about themselves in the 3rd person as part of their interview prep.
But not actually. So if you're
no, weird. No.
I think they're both brilliant tips. Danielle, I wanted to ask you yours, but I've realised we're very, very close to end time. So I'm sorry. Can we come on to the questions that we should ask in an interview? And this is so crucial. So the bit you do in the middle is really important, but the way that you start out an interview, the way you end an interview is the bits which will be the most remembered. Unfortunately, it's just the truth. So these questions you ask, you have to ask a question, don't you, Danielle?
Yeah, you do. But this is something that people get really stressed out about. what's a good question to ask. So what they end up doing is Googling, you know, what's a good question to ask in an interview, and they'll find however many questions, and some of the, you know, they have their questions, and then some of it will naturally get covered in the interview. The conversation will happen, and it will be like, oh, I was going to ask that, and you know, one by one, their questions are going. But sometimes what you can find is you know, you Google questions, you know, they might be like, oh, that's quite an impressive question, but do you care? You know, do you care what the answer is? And so if it's just like, oh, you know, where do you see this company going? What kind of things are you going to be involved in this next 12 months? Or, you know, they're great questions to ask. But why do you want to know? You know, what are you going to gain from knowing that? And it comes back again to be interested. Ask questions that you are genuinely interested in knowing the answer to. It's no good to know about, you know, the things the business is going to be involved in if you're like, if, you know, imagine then if they say, you know, well, what do you think about that? What's your opinion on that? And you're like, oh,
because we're looking to have a conversation, aren't we? Again,
you know, so yeah.
Sorry, I had a bit of an echo there. So I know that Amy, you give a ton of advice. Obviously,
it's my favourite part. It's my favourite part, and I wish I could just talk about this for an hour, but I can't. So if you're going to ask them, firstly, remember that they'll forget what you said. It's that amazing Maya Anderson quote that people forget what you said, forget what you did. They never forget the way you made them feel. So you have to end on a positive. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us that every human being that walks this earth, whether you're Mother Teresa or you're a serial killer, in our core DNA, everybody needs to feel seen, heard, and valued above everything else, after food, drink, water, and all that. Mm-hmm. So if you can make that individual feel seen, heard, and valued, not because they're a company, not because of their job title, because they're a human being themselves, that is the biggest, most powerful way you can impact somebody before you leave a room. Can I just ask, what is it that you love most about working here? Why did you come here? So that when they leave that room, they feel like you saw them, you heard them, and you valued them. And that is the best way for them to feel positive towards you. That's my favorite interview question to end an interview. I've got a few others, but I know you're stuck for time.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite way to end an interview. And when you say it, mean it. Look them in the eye and don't think of them as a job title or your next employer or you're the person that's going to help you pay your mortgage next month. They're a person just like you that went through all of this stuff, and just be interested in them.
Yeah, and it's very unlikely they'll have already covered that early in the interview, coming back to what you had said, Danielle, about, oh, I hate that when someone asks a question and you've already answered it and you just, both of you suddenly feel really awkward. But that is a great one because it isn't likely to have been said before.
And also, you'll know whether you want to work there after this answer.
Yes.
I promise you, because you'll know from the look on their face. If they struggle to give you something, you've got to think, and you'll find out stuff about this business that you won't find in that job description, you won't find on their Facebook page. And that there's a question there from Jack. How do you know what's right for you? You'll feel it, hopefully, in this answer.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So there's two more things, and then I'm going to come to your final roundup. So the next thing is about whether you ask for the job at the end of the interview. And we've talked about, I want to do an entire show about this, but the bottom line is that do what fits within your personality. Some hiring managers absolutely hate that line. It can really screw everything up that's gone before, but there's no reason not to ask in your own terminology whether you've given all the information that they need to make a decision about you. So what you want to make sure is that there's no question unanswered at the end. So if we weren't so short of time, we'd go into that a bit more. And then the follow-up, and this is my final question to you, Danielle, do we send an email? Do we make a call after the interview? What do we do? How do we get in touch with the client?
I would say I would say always follow up. To be honest, I would say whether you're actually, you'll walk out of the interview, as Amy says, you'll know, you'll feel it, whether you want to be part of that team, part of that business or not. But I would, out of common courtesy, I would always follow up and, thank them for their time. So it's been absolutely great to meet you. If you are interested, we were talking on LinkedIn last night and it was amazing that got so much engagement. But if you are interested in the role and you really would love to be taken further, then say that. There's nothing wrong in kind of expressing, I absolutely love meeting you and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you again. Maybe you come out of the interview and you think, do you know what? It's maybe not for me. I would still follow up. Never burn bridges. It's all about connections. And so when I think me personally, an email to thank them for their time, I think is the done thing.
Okay. And in our final minute, I'm going to hand over to you, Amy, for your final tips around this massive subject.
I'm going to say the follow-up because I think that's important. And if you're going to tell them that you enjoyed meeting them and you enjoy exactly what Danielle said, I think it goes back to being seen, heard and valued. So tell them what one thing did have the biggest impact on you. What one thing had you thinking all day? Be really specific rather than, just, they're sending me an email because they think they should do. Can you go in that interview room remembering that you have to make that person feel seen, heard and valued? I know I keep saying that and you're probably getting bored of it, but it comes down to that when you make that other person feel like you really value them, they will be so much more open to forgiving you for your shortcomings and feel like they connect with you. So don't go in that room just talking about how fabulous you are. We know you are, that's great, and I want you to do that, but you also have to remember that other person needs to feel fabulous too. So is it just me and you, Daniel? Have we lost Louise?
So. Oh no, what's happened? I thought she was just reading the messages really intently. Oh dear.
I know. I don't quite know what to do. Oh, she's back. Yeah, she's back. Oh, she's gone.
Wait.
Hi, everyone that's watching.
Let's talk about Louise.
I liked what you said about sending the follow-up stuff, because I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't send the thank you.
No, and I will do that on their. Oh, let's see, we're taking over now. I'll do that on my candidate's behalf. I did the other day, because the feedback the candidate gave me I knew it would make my client feel amazing, because he said, this is the kind of manager that I would naturally want to go the extra mile for. And I was like,
you gave that feedback back. That's amazing.
And she was like, oh, that's wonderful. She loved it. Who wouldn't?
Okay, cool. So I think we've done an hour, which is what I think that Louise wanted to do. Hard to do. So hard to do when it is on Skype and there's a recruiter in the middle. Yeah, that's so true. So true. Okay, so should we? I was going to say.
Sorry, lady.
I was going to wrap up and close the session.
That's okay. We've had a bit of a technical hitch, and I just realised the colour on my face is awful. I've been listening intently in the back, but unfortunately, Louise's broadband appears to have died on us just as we get to the very end. It's been a fabulous show so far, really fascinating, and certainly going by the comments on the side, really interesting for people who have tuned in. So on that note, apologies for stepping in, but Amy, thank you very much. Absolutely
lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you.
And Danielle, again, thank you very much. It's been a really fascinating show. And next week, I don't have the notes on the show next week, but it'll be back at the same time, same place. Please, everyone, come back. And in the meantime, thank you very much and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.